Welcome to Start Now, a conversational podcast which discusses topical issues designed to get people to think about the challenges occurring in the world around us and how each of us can be a part of positive, transformative change. Start Now is meant to be informative and engaging while encouraging and motivating people to start where they are and with the resources they have to make a difference in their communities and in the worlds around them. Let's start now. Hey everybody, welcome to Start Now. We are so glad that you have joined us on today's episode. In today's episode, we will be talking about Black history and celebrating Black history and culture. And if you are watching our podcast, you probably noticed a very beautiful person next to me. This is my dear friend Tatiana. She's going to be joining us today as my co-host. So I'm excited to be having her. Just some background, a little bit of intro on Tatiana. We actually met, we're in a couple of organizations together. She is also a member of the one and only Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And she is an amazing regional and urban planner and historic preservation professional. She's just awesome in so many different areas. And so in our episode today, first off, I'm excited that you're here. I just want to say that. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been wanting Tatiana to be on the podcast for the longest time and as a guest, but it appears that I've been asking the wrong question. I wanted her to be as a guest, right? The moment I said co-host, she was like, yes, I humbly accept that. I was like, awesome, I'm all about it.
Going down like that.
No, that's all me and my extraness. But on today's episode, we will be talking about, like I said before, African cultures. And the reason that we're doing this is because it is such an amazing opportunity to bring awareness to the cultures that exist around the world. It obviously goes without saying that hundreds and thousands of cultures exist worldwide, and it's through understanding and awareness and knowledge of these cultures that we're really able to bring about diversity and have an understanding, appreciation, and respect for these cultures that exist. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce two dear friends of mine, Mr. Irvin Chikoti and Mr. Patrick Casimir. And so introductions on our guest today. Patrick is a first-generation Haitian American. He was born in Boston, but raised in the Miami, Florida. So for anybody that is listening or watching from Florida, one time representing.
305.
Yes, exactly. But he has an extensive background in the performing arts, and that's actually how Pat and I met through dancing in college. One time, Pat. Right. But Patrick still performs even today up in the DC and Maryland area while also working for the Department of Defense. Now, I don't know if you can catch him dancing at his desk at the department, but you never know. Maybe you can look out for it.
Possibly.
And possibly, right? You know, on those days where you're just like working on hard contracts or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ivan is from the country of Zambia. Now, Ivan and I met, oh my gosh, Ivan, maybe 4 or 5 years ago? And I didn't know anything about his culture, but thankfully we were able to take lots of road trips together. So I got to hear and learn so many amazing stories. So I'm really excited that he's here today. He got his education in Zambia while also working in London before he came to the United States. Currently, he's a professor of financial management at Florida A&M University. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on our podcast today. All right, we are going to start our very first question, okay? I want y'all to tell me a little bit about your cultures and your country. So talk to us a little bit about where you're from, some different customs. And Ivan, this is like a really cool question for you, because when I found out how many languages you spoke, I was just in disbelief. It's crazy. So talk to us a little bit about the languages of your area, your region, or your country, a little bit about your customs, and maybe some of the demographics as well. Pat, you want to start?
Sure. So obviously my country's located, my original ethnic country where my family is from is Haiti. A lot of people might have known it as Hispaniola. That's kind of how it started. and then it broken up. So our country shares the island with the Dominican Republic. Some of the dialects or languages spoken there. Obviously, French is spoken there. There's a dialect called Creole, which is like a French dialect that's spoken there. You do find people that speak Spanish over there for obvious reasons, but then you have some individuals, not as common, but well, I'd say it's semi-common, but you do find people that speak the English language. But mostly, I would say French Creole is going to be prominent, as well as the French dialect. A lot of people, and we can get into this later on, but our country was really known for things like sugarcane back in the day, or sugar. We were a very rich and lavish country. I still think we're kind of rich and lavish, regardless of what anybody says. You know, there's a lot of different history about everything that happened there, even with my last name. And things of that nature, in terms of revolution, in terms of historical milestones that kind of set precedents to a lot of other things that happened in the United States that we sometimes don't refer to Haiti from. So yeah, that's kind of just kind of a, for lack of a better word, cliff note version of things that most people would speak of or would want to know in like a elevator speech for Haiti.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You get thumbs up from Tatiana.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. I'm moving forward there.
Yeah,
That's all I was waiting on.
she's going to be jumping, y'all. She's going to be jumping in and out, you know, every now and then. We have to get her warmed up to the podcast life. Ivan,
on camera.
yeah. Ivan, what about you? I am so interested in you sharing everything that you've told me with the world. So talk to us a little bit about Zambia and what it's like.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of my experience. And like anything else, most of the stuff that I'll share is not, we're not a monolithic culture. So there may be some variations. So some of the things that I'll say may be generalizations. But again, thank you and congratulations on the podcast. I'm so excited for you, for both of you. And so looking forward to hearing more materials from you guys. As far as Zambia is concerned, let's talk about location. So Zambia is in Africa, right? And so it's located south central. So if you're thinking South Africa, you're going up, you get this one other country, that Botswana and Zimbabwe, and then you get Zambia. More or less the size of Texas. If you think of it in size, it's as big as Texas, but has
That's
the
a
same
really good reference point.
Yes, the size of Texas, that makes it maybe 4 to 5 times bigger than Florida, but has the same population as Florida. So there's about 20 million people living in Zambia. A fairly young country, only got independence in 1964. So it's fairly young independence. Like most countries on the continent of Africa, you're talking 50 plus countries on the continent of Africa, there are multi languages in the country itself. So you're talking about within a population of 20 million people, you have 72 different languages that are spoken.
Wow.
Wow.
And
Languages,
so,
not dialects.
Yes, these languages and dialects, yes. So the total dialects are 72. I mean, dialects are 72, and then languages, you can narrow them down to about 15 or so,
Okay.
but very distinct
That's still
from
a
each
lot.
other.
15
Yes.
languages and 72
Yes.
dialects.
All
And
official.
so, yeah, and so if you were to look at me, for instance, within my own family, we speak 6 different languages. And so that's how multifaceted and dynamic it is. But English is the main official language. So everything official is spoken, written, and in English. And so, yeah, there's a lot there, and I hope we can get into some of the culture stuff and these things that have gone. But just generally, that's what the country is, a very beautiful place to visit, mostly flat. And so you don't know too many hills. We have a few places where there are hills, but it's mostly plateau.
Which
Climate,
is actually so different from Haiti because Haiti is so mountainous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually part of the name, Haiti. It talks about, that's the name of the city, the country, and that's kind of a translation for mountains. So yeah.
very flat and a lot of trees and a lot of grass. It's tropical. Yeah.
Okay, so the weather is still the same then as in Haiti. So like it has a tropical type temperature and climate.
Yeah, so Zambia has three climates, and the rain is what determines everything.
Okay.
There's a hot season where it's hot and dry, so it's just hot and no rain. And then there's a cold and dry season. It's cold and dry, and then there's a rainy season when it's hot and wet. And so it's the complete opposite of what happens in Florida. So if it's summer here, it's winter out there. And so right now they are going towards winter as we are coming out of winter. So
Right.
it's their fall season there now.
And now how Patrick was talking about how sugarcane was once a big commodity from Haiti, is there a certain industry that's more prevalent than any other in Zambia?
So the biggest thing there is mining. We are one of the world's largest producers of copper. So copper mining is a big deal there. And so there's all kinds of mining. There's deep shaft mining where you actually go underground. There's open pit mining where they just dig a big hole in the middle of nowhere. So a lot of mining. So mining is huge. That's about 70% of the economy there. Agriculture is huge. A lot of farming going on there for commercial purposes, and tourism. That's huge. I always encourage people, if you ever want to go see some animals in the wild and not in cages, that's the place to go. So
you know, which is really interesting because that actually is one of our questions later in the podcast, is that if people wanted to go to Zambia. So hold that thought.
Yeah, I'll give you some places to go, things to do, and you know, some adventures to actually look out for. Yes.
All right, so jot that down because we're going to get to that later in the episode. But I am going to stay with you because you were saying that you hope that we would be able to talk more about the culture, and that actually is the very next question: is tell us a little bit about what your cultures are like. So that can include your food, family life, music, you know, entertainment. If there's like a particular sport that's really popular in your country, then what is that? So talk to us, and we'll start off with you, Ivan.
Yeah, so culture and traditions. Africa is very like a lot of the way Asia is, like most of Africa. Culture is huge in Africa, and it's centered on family. And the idea of family in African culture is an extended family. It is not just the nucleus. So, and what that means is that everybody knows everybody, as in everybody's business. So things like, I'll give you for instance, if somebody was to get married, for instance, everybody is involved. And so I'm sure you've heard of dowry, right? You've heard of dowry. So before you actually get to that point, you as the dude, you have to tell your family, and they have to do their due diligence. And you know, it's like an extended marriage counseling type deal. You really have to know and be sure of what you're doing before you actually make that commit. And so you have to be able to convince your family, and then that family is convinced. The two families meet and they talk, and there is some consideration that you have to give into. And I'll give you myself as an example. I had to give 15 heads of cattle as dowry.
Wow.
Okay.
So it's not just the husband and wife to be, so the fiancés. It's not just they meet the parents; the whole families meet. Okay.
Oh yeah. And conversely, if you decide to split the same process, you have to go before. So they really try and keep the units together. So and it's notwithstanding if there are abusive situations, they don't want. But you see, where family can actually help two people, the family does go out of its way to make sure that the family unit is kept. And so there's a lot about family. So my mother's sisters are my mother. They're not we don't have aunts, we don't have uncles. Everybody's to you is your dad and your mother. Okay. So some of my closest relatives are my distant cousins. I don't even know how I'm related to them because it's like fourth generation. But we are, because of the family, we are so tight, and so that's a lot. So it's a lot of family, a lot of faith is what drives a lot of African culture, and so weddings, funerals, African funerals are they're different. I mean, it's people are mourning, and when you say mourning, if you've ever seen an African funeral, is people are mourning, and so that's a big deal. The birth of a child, that's a big deal too. There's a lot that goes into that, and so yeah, I'll give you some more details, but generally it's just weddings, birth, marriage, death. Those are some of the significant events that set out African culture different from a lot of other cultures.
Yeah, and one of my friends is Nigerian. To go back to what you were saying about births are a big thing as well. And they were saying that the whole family will travel to see the new baby, and there's like a naming ceremony and everything that goes into it. So yeah, I know a little bit about what you're talking about. But 15 cattle, huh?
Yep. She better be the one, or else you.
That's it.
Yeah.
See, in America, all we have to do is worry about the size of the ring. I don't know what I would do if I have to worry about.
I think your way might be better, Ivan.
Right.
Yeah. The moral was, you see, is you know, if you're deciding to start a family, there's commitment. There's a principle that it does. It's not just a commercial thing or just showing out wealth. Is, you know, you want to put what's the English say? Put your
money where your mouth is.
Yes, and so that's the key thing. I mean, if she's that important to you, and you want to, it's like an investment, and so you're showing a sign that you know you're serious about this one, and so that's the principle behind the whole thing. Yeah.
Marriage is economic.
Yeah, we definitely need to bring that over. And what about you, Pat? What are some of your culturals as far as your food and customs and?
Well, food is always a big thing. You know, Haitians love to eat. They love to eat. I remember my mother even always, I feel like she was smuggling sugar in my milk because she wanted me to be nice and fat, because, you know, they love to eat. They love their rice. They love their meats. They love their spices. So they're really big into food. Some of it is, you know, some of it might be kind of historical, like you were only given what you were given, so you had to make it work, you know. So, you know, you were given the worst parts of the you know, the meat of the body of the cattle, and so that's all you were given. So you had to make that stuff, you know, that stuff up, you know, grill, you know, things like that, you know, which are basically pork morsels that are like kind of some people fry it, some people bake it, depending on how healthy you want to be, but you know, things like that, you know, they come from a historical background where, you know, that's all they were given, you know, pickles, you know, they were only given things that were left over that the so-called slave masters didn't want anymore. And so we had to make it. And so, you know, food was a very big thing there. Music is a huge thing here. There's a lot of influence from, you know, there's a Latin influence, there's an African influence, there's a lot of influence that makes the sound. So sometimes when I hear other music, I'm like, man, that sounds like what's something that I grew up on. But then I realize, no, that's from another country, you know. And so how a lot of that evolves is big. Ironically, you know, family is big. It's a funny thing when my mother says, or somebody in my family says, oh, I met somebody new and they're from Haiti, and the first thing they ask me is, what's their last name? So it's a big thing because yeah, it's a big thing because then they can, it's so historical how they relate those things back to that family and how that family grew. And a lot of who you are is based on the last name and where that name comes from. And, you know, if you say certain names, it's like taboo. Oh, don't mess with those people, you know, X, Y, and Z. It may be for political reasons, or it may be, and I'm not going to say specific names because I don't want to, you know, say either or, but for political reasons, or it could be just from a personal interaction that the family has had. You know, Haitians, when they speak, they're extremely emotional when they speak. they could just be saying, you know, I'm going to the store, and somebody might think that you're yelling at them, but you're not. It's just there is an emotion. There's a lot of power behind the Haitian culture when it comes to that. Ironically, my mother and my father were in arranged marriage, so they didn't know each other till prior to them getting married, and then they got married and then moved to the United States. So, you know, that type of dowry kind of feel like that, you know, the family's marrying into another family, you know, because, you know, my father was in this affluent societal type of family, and my mother, you know, and that just happened. So that type of same, you know, marrying into a specific type of family to build your empire, for lack of better words, it's not as common, but it's still there. People may be subconsciously doing it and with not even knowing, but, you know, that type of atmosphere is definitely still there.
Okay. So you all have shared just so much about your customs and your traditions and just the things that really would enable somebody to be able to relate through food, through music. What are some of your fondest memories, either growing up or, you know, as you grew older through your adulthood, about your country and about your culture? What is something that one memory you just will never forget no matter what happens?
I'll go. I'll take a crack at it. You know, growing up in Africa, you see, when you don't have plenty, and the innocence of a kid is just, it's something that I really marvel at. And we didn't have toys, but guess what? We made our own toys, right? So I was very artsy. We would make cars using wires, and it was so much fun making our own toys. You could make toys using the banana stem. The girls used to make nice dolls out of that, and they would make dolls out of cloth and out of anything. Just the ability to have fun with things that you actually made for yourself. And I always tell my little kids and say, you know what, you know, there's something about the child that, you know, is so oblivious to what's out there. And I always tell kids here, you know what, just be thankful that, you know, you can actually go into a store and buy a figurine or buy a superhero. There's kids out there. I mean, there was a time, think of it this way. If you look at the tire of a car, would stick sticks in there and would be running and having so much fun going up and down the street. And that was so much fun because we didn't have bikes.
Right.
And so it is just the innocence of just being content in the environment that you grew, but still had so much fun, had so much great memories just growing up in that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just amazing too, being able to have an appreciation, you know, and I know in American society, you know, like you were saying, everything is so readily available. You can just go to a store and buy whatever it is you need. And I think sometimes that negatively impacts our creativity or our ability, you know, to have that ingenuity and really be able to be thankful and appreciative of what we have because it's so readily available. If you break something, you can just go out and buy a new one. You know, and so I think it's just amazing that you all were able to have that. And I think it definitely contributes to a character, you know, when you're able to literally look around your environment, see what you have, and still have a happy and content life from there. So thanks for sharing that. What about you, Pat? What is one of your most fondest memories?
I think I have kind of two. One of them is just, you know, growing up, first generation in the States. I grew up a little bit, somewhat in Boston, and then a little bit in Florida, and most of it in Florida. And I grew up in Miami, which I kind of just considered an extension of Haiti because there are a lot of us. There are a lot of us down there. So, and I just remember growing up, and I knew every weekend there was some type of get together, some type of, you know, party. It never started out as a party. It was like, you're going to your auntie's house. We're gonna go, I'm going to, chill with your auntie. And it was like, cool. And then someone else would show up, and then someone else would show up, and then someone else would show up, and then someone would bring a radio, and then someone would start bringing food. And the next thing you know, there's 40 people in the house just living their best life. And it was just, and everybody was in everybody's business. Like back then, you thought it was horrible because you're like, how do you know this about me? And I don't even know who you are. And it was a constant like community feeling. Like all the kids would play together, and we'd be just having a ball. And the parents are as loud as can be. And you got there at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're still there at 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're just going at it. And it was just that sense of just having that, and no one's thinking about what's going on outside of the world, although they're talking about politics to the day they die. But no one's thinking about, everybody's just having a great time. When something was out, oh, we're out of food, and then someone would get in the kitchen and start cooking more food. Like it was just always that sense of community, that sense of, I sometimes miss it now because everybody's kind of gone their separate ways. But being able to be in that same area, to be able to like have that sense of community and love, and sometimes hate, but that's all part of being in the family. So that was one. And for me, I think it's just the little things. Like for some reason, my mother always, or my father had always had, like, even to this day, they have all these random remedies that, like, I don't even know where you made this up from. I don't even know if it's even viable, but I'm going to do it anyway, so she's like,
dance practice, you had like a sprain or whatever, and you were talking about some random remedy. I was like, what is that?
Listen, I'm telling you, and it works. And it works. And I mean, literally, like, my mother called me the other day, she was just like, you got to make sure you watch your blood pressure. It runs in your family, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to send you up some mango leaves. I was like, mango leaves? What am I going to do with some? I'm setting up some mango leaves and avocado leaves, put it in some water, drink it like a tea. And I'm just like, what? And, and then you start researching some of the stuff. Like they're based on traditions, but like, if you look at from the scientific part of it, you'll find out like the oils do this and such do that. But it's a funny thing just to kind of get those ancient remedies. How they help to back in Haiti, how they used to help ladies induce their labor. They used to make them drink certain types of water. I mean, it's just the little things, and you sit here and you're so dumbfounded. I'm like, I feel like you're trying to kill somebody, but it's those little things. And even to this day, I still use a lot of those remedies that my mother, when I'm sick, I use a lot of those remedies that my mothers or my aunties used to tell me about. So,
what's interesting is that when you get older, and possibly have your own kids, you're gonna be sitting on the porch rocking. One of them gonna come up with some ailment. You're gonna say, "No, baby, just go."
Yep.
You're gonna give them one of those random remedies.
Rub this on your chest. Rub this on your chest. You're fine.
It worked for them. It worked for me. It'll work for the future.
Right.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Right. So with your memories, we all know that there are certain things that are true about our cultures and countries, and certain things that are just misconceptions and stereotypes. So I'll give you an example. So with the Italian people are like, oh, they're very passionate, they're very fiery. That is true. Now, people may think all we eat is pasta. That is not true. What are some things that we all know to be true for the Zambian and Haitian culture? And then what are some common misconceptions or stereotypes about your cultures and countries? Ivan, you want to start first?
Yeah, sadly, and I've always tried to put my finger on what the main cause is. And it's like, I'll give you an example. If say, for instance, somebody in Africa, what do you think about if everybody in the United States was described as, if say, for instance, the representatives of a typical United States culture person was hip hop? That's what happens with Africa. Is the largest representation of African society is the little kids that have, there's poor people living in huts, no water, and that's such a huge misconception of what the whole continent of Africa is. I mean, there's poverty, there's those things do exist, but once you go there, you realize how diverse and how just multiplicity of things that are going on there. And so it's got challenges. Challenges are there, but the one thing that you realize, and anybody who has traveled and they'll tell you this, they're the kindest people that you ever come across. That's the first thing that hit me when I got here is everybody sounds like they're so aloof, they're not so connected, they're not so concerned about each other. People are genuinely concerned about the next person, even strangers. Okay, they want to make sure, especially for strangers, they want to make sure you're comfortable, you're feeling safe. And so that is one thing that never gets communicated, is how nice people are generally. And that's not to say that you don't get instances when things happen, but generally, that's especially to strangers, to new people, they go out of their way to make sure that they're comfortable, and some of the nicest people that you could ever come across.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to know too, because when Americans travel abroad, one of the first things we're taught is to be wary of, strangers, be wary of people we don't know, And so it was really interesting, like when I was traveling abroad, you would have different people come up to you and try to help you. And the first thing you want to do is, no, thank you. No, I got it. And it's so interesting to know that the Zambian people are so welcoming. I think that's one of the first places I'm going to go when we start traveling again. What about you, Pat? What are some common misconceptions or stereotypes about the Haitian culture of people?
So, and this actually happened yesterday or 2 days ago. And so I was with some friends and she was speaking and she was like, yeah, I was talking to somebody and I guess I wasn't paying attention. So they got angry. So they started speaking in Creole. And, she was like, oh, I hope you're not putting a spell on me. And I was just like, well, where did you get that from? I was like, let's unpack that, So, and there's this conception that like if you're from Haiti or your family's from Haiti, that you have some direct connection to some type of mystical art that now I'm David Copperfield and I can like make people disappear kind of thing, and I'm
putting like voodoo spells on people.
Yeah, and it's like then you have to like tell them like it's in a religion. I said, is there some extremities to it? Yes, but that's just like any type of religion. There are people that take Christianity and take it to the extreme, and then but a lot of it comes from a place that help them, and I'll talk about that later about things you didn't really know. A lot of people don't know about Haiti, but not everybody that's Haitian, who came from Haiti or of Haitian descent, dabbles in the voodoo religion. It is a part of our culture. I'm not ever going to deny it. A lot of our arts, a lot of cultural portions of it are, stemmed in that religion and reality. We've had famous people come and study it and make it an art form, Catherine Dunham, things of that nature, So like there are a lot of other things, but just because I'm Haitian doesn't necessarily mean that I practice voodoo or I'm a voodoo priest or anything of that nature. No, it's only through dancing. Right. But Haitians are extremely passionate people. I will say that. I will definitely say that. I can tell you sometimes my mother is like, in a certain, I've had my friends and they'll call their mothers and they'll say, I haven't seen you in a while. And my mother would be like, well, I might as well be dead on the floor. You might as, if I was dead, you wouldn't have known for a month and a half. And, it's always this big dramatic story. And I'm like, okay, Mom, I get it. I'll call you, So yes, they're really, they can be very theatrical, but I think it's also because they're just passionate. My family is extremely passionate. They can be ride or die, and for lack of a better word, when I can remember times where I was in dire need, or somebody in my family was in dire need, and they will find resources out of nowhere, and it's because of that sense of community, kind of going back to what's been like the ongoing theme here in Zambia as well as here in Haiti, is that they will come together as a community. Like if one of us is in dire need, my aunts, my uncles, like people will, pool their resources together to make sure that you're being taken care of. Now, will they talk about you after? Absolutely. That's just part of what we do, but they're going to make sure that you're taken care of. If something happens medically, if something happens in any type of form, they will come together and find out a way. And this is like families, friends of friends. Like I've seen my mother give money to people that she barely knew, but because she knows of they were there for her, that she's going to definitely repay the favor. So that sense of taking care of each other is definitely there. I think that a lot of people just associate Haiti with being in turmoil and being impoverished country. And there are so many other parts of Haiti. I went to on a cruise one time, and we got to stop in Haiti. And being on the sands, and it's blue waters, and people don't ever show you those sides of Haiti. They show you the sides where they tell you to donate to the children's fund, and it's some impoverished individual that's in front of you. And I said, and just like any other country, everybody has their highs and their lows, but for Haiti, I feel like sometimes there's so much focus on what they don't have versus what they do have. And sometimes it's frustrating to see that. And so you always have to kind of go back to your family and find out the good parts. And they'll tell you, look, we have resorts, we have tourism, we have things that are happening, just like any other country. It's just that there's not that focus on there.
Right. I actually want to use what you were saying to segue into the, what don't people know, what people probably don't know about your country. And so I actually have already learned so much, and I know you too, but I've still learned so much just in the time that we've had on this podcast. But Pat, as you were talking about, obviously there's, two sides, two countries, and you were talking about how we don't really see the beautiful side of Haiti. What is something else that people probably don't know about your culture or your country that you want to share?
A lot of people don't know that we were the first country to revolt against slavery. We were the very, very, very first country. We were the first country. So kind of goes back into a lot of them. We were one of the countries that were enslaved, just like any other country in the area. However, the Haitians at one point started to tap into their own self-worth, started to tap into their own spirituality, which was where voodoo comes into play. And they, and just like any, but it was more of an ancestral thing. They toned into their ancestors to help them, and they fought against the revolt to drive France out of Haiti. So they were the first country to ever have abolished slavery, which is a lot of reasons why in America they didn't talk about it when it was happening, when they found out, because they didn't want the slaves in America to get the same idea, which too little too late, it happened. So, but there was that, a lot of people don't realize that, but also what the caveat with that is that part of France leaving Haiti was that they said that Haiti had to pay them for them to leave and have their own freedom. So it was not until all the way until the late 1970s, Haiti was still paying taxes and things back to France, which basically France was taking all that money from them, which almost left them in a very dire state. So a lot of the reasons why you saw the turmoil and things that were happening in Haiti is because a lot of the money that they were making from sugarcane and all the other products, rum and all those other products that they were selling, a lot of it, all the proceeds or the profit from that was going to another country. So, if you're getting $1 and you're giving 75 cents back to the dollar to somebody else, but it takes you $1.50 to run your country, what are you left with? After a while, you're at a point where you have no choice. And so there, if a country or society is in a situation where they are in dire needs, the emotion starts to kick in, and that's what happens. And so that's what you see a lot of. But France was still banking on Haiti for years, like almost hundreds of years after they left. So even though they weren't enslaved, it was still it was still hard. So a lot of people don't realize that, but I tell people, but because of what happened in Haiti, it spread the notion that, other slaves, if they can do it there, then, things can happen in other areas. So I just kind of always remind people about that, hey, I know it's in the United States, but just remember, it started somewhere else. So yeah, that's one quick tidbit that most people don't know.
Okay, what about you, Ivan? What is something that people probably don't know about Zambia?
Yeah, Zambia, like I said, Zambia is fairly new. We got Christianity and religion in the no more than 100 years ago. But if you went to Zambia, you actually discover that it's a very religious place, very religious. I mean, a lot of them are Christians to the extent that the constitution actually the preamble of the constitution is based on Christian teaching. They actually, the way you have Muslim countries, Zambia is actually, they have a declaration that Zambia is a Christian nation. And so they have actually outwardly come and embraced Christianity as part of their actual governance system. Are they perfect at upholding all the Christian values? No, but that's one thing that they pride themselves in, and being able to use the tenets of Christian religion to be able uh, to to govern themselves. Very open to other religions. I know Muslims, there's about 5-10% of Muslims are there. We still do have also some ethnic, just the old time religion where it's mostly spiritual type. There's about 5% of that, but Christian religion is huge there. It's a big deal, and it's part of the fabric of the society there.
Okay. When you all, and I know, Ivan, you grew up obviously most of your life in Zambia, and then you
Yes.
moved to London before you came to the States. So when you came over here, in addition to the cultures and customs that you talked about before, how different was it for you coming to America? You know, no pun intended, with the movie just being released.
I just watched that actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
But how different was it for you? And was it easy for you to adapt to American customs and traditions? And how different are American customs and traditions from those of Zambian customs and traditions?
So the first thing that hit me, and this you can identify. I came on. I think it was on New Year's Day when I arrived in Michigan.
And
Okay.
I always think that's so random from London
I
to
know.
Michigan.
Yeah. And so think actually I moved from I actually traveled from Zambia where it was summertime there. It was like you're talking 110 degrees, and I came to Michigan. It was like 10 degrees without wind chill. We had some wind chill. And so for me, the weather was a huge shock. Okay. In terms of culture, there wasn't much of a shock because see, I don't think I mentioned this. One thing that's huge about Zambian is you have to seek after knowledge. Education is they pump education into your head until God knows, man. So one of the things that we actually do in Zambian education is you learn about all different countries. I actually know more about Florida than the people that live in Florida because I actually studied Florida in high school. I studied the Great Lakes Central Seaway, the manufacturing base in all that in Michigan, Pennsylvania, all that. I studied about agriculture in Florida, all the oranges and orange. I used to know how much the production in oranges was. So the education system,
Wow.
yes, the education system there prepares you for what's out there in different places, and that's the only thing that I find that people here miss is you don't learn so much about other religions, other countries. It can only make you better. So for me, I knew what to expect. Expectations and reality sometimes are not the same thing. So I had to make some changes in terms of the food. I mean, the food, like Patrick said, food is a huge deal. I mean, I was used to home cooked meals, and the whole fast food thing has never been my thing. I can do that maybe once a day, but when you have to do that for the whole week because I was just my own, that was a huge change. Um, the individualistic approach to it's just you and your family was a big deal for me because I was used to large families and everybody was together. I mean, you fought, but you were still together. But here it's like everybody wants to be in that small unit. So that was a huge shock. But what helped me was just because I was prepared, I'd studied, and I knew these things all my life about just what's out there, and not to have any preconceptions about where you're going to. That's always helpful because you get them in all kinds of shades and colors and types, and so just to embrace what was coming and just assimilate and be able to put your best spin about what you're doing. So that's what I found more effective about the cultural shock that is of coming from two different worlds.
Yeah, and I think that's really important too, what you're saying about your perceptions, because I know, especially in mainstream media, all you really know sometimes, because especially what you're talking about education, is you have to seek it out. All you really know sometimes is what's put in front of you by other media outlets, or what's put on the radio, or what's put on the TV, or what's put on podcasts and streaming services. So I think it's really important, like you were saying, to be able to, have your perceptions in right places, and then seek that education out. Thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting. Pat, what about you?
I was so engulfed in his conversation, I almost forgot the question.
Yeah, so the question, and I know you're a first generation Haitian
Yeah,
American,
there
so
we go. Yeah.
you grew up in pretty much in America, but when you moved to Miami, like you were saying, there's such a huge Haitian population down there. I'm sure that you
Right.
still had a lot of easy access to your cultures and your traditions. Did you
Yeah.
find it, how was that transition for you?
So I think a lot of it was very similar. I think that's where I went into the vortex. He was talking about education, because that was just a huge thing for us. We had situations. My mother didn't believe in C's. Like, she was not that person, so growing up, we always had to remember that we needed to, it was a big thing about our grades, and we had to keep our grades up, and, it's all about education. I know growing up, and it's a common thing, you could ask any Haitian that I know, when you were growing up, they always said that when you either had to be a nurse, a lawyer, or a doctor. Like, that was your three options. There was nothing else. So that when you had changed or tried to do something else, there was always that question of, you wanted to go into business. Well, is this like a business law? They always try to swerve you back. So, I mean, when you look back at it, a lot of it was because they were really just trying to make sure that you were kind of grounded in education. That was a big thing, to make sure that you were grounded in that. And then just a sense of like responsibilities. We had to do our own chores. We had to, there was always things that we had to do. On Saturday morning, I kid you not, every morning at like 8 a.m., my mother would blast the radio, and you were getting up and you were, cleaning the bathroom, cleaning the floors, clean every day. I was like, but I just cleaned this 2 days. I don't care. Clean it again, So it was always that type of, sense of responsibility, taking care of yourself. And I think part of it makes me a lot more self-sufficient now, because you were taught those things at a young age. Like, I was doing these things when I was young, like 3, 4, 5 years old. They were instilling you to do that and learn how to be, take care of yourself. I think that was a big thing growing up in terms of culture wise, and always still, my mother made it her thing that she always wanted to take us back to Haiti. We always had to go back. She wanted us to go and see Haiti, and have the family see Haiti, because she always wanted you to understand, where we came from, in the house. We were always listening to Haitian music. Haitian radio was probably on all day long. Like, one radio station was always on the Haitian radio station. And, it did help definitely growing up in Miami, because there was a lot of, that Haitian culture there. So we were exposed to a lot of things. I think a lot of that's kind of how I got into the arts, because I was exposed so much to the arts from being in Haiti, and my mother exposing me to a lot of that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what I really like about a statement that you made, that it makes so much sense now, because I'm really blessed to have friends from different cultures. And so obviously, Ivan from Zambia, you from Haiti, another one of my friends is from Ethiopia, another one from Nigeria. And it's so funny, because when I look at y'all's professions, you're exactly right. Y'all literally are either in business, medicine, or law, like all of my friends. So I found that really interesting when you said that.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. So it's definitely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, no, you're fine. I just found that very fascinating because it's not something that you kind of put two and two together. But when you made that comment, it literally made me think back. I'm like, oh my gosh, sure enough, like all of my friends are in one of those three areas. So
Yep. And every doctor in your family gets all, they're like, oh, have you met my son, the doctor? They always introduce you, he's a lawyer. Do you know him? He will help you. And then I'm like, I can't help him. I don't do what, but yeah.
So I wanted to kind of ask, out of what you all have been talking about so far, is there anything that's kind of like maybe strange about your culture that people don't know? So for example, like I was saying before, one of my friends is Nigerian. And when we were growing up, because I've been dancing pretty much all my life, I know, Pat, you know this. And so when I was in high school, I think that's when, we met him and, we traveled nationally and internationally. And people would always ask him whenever we would get on stage or we would be speaking, why don't you ever look people in the eye? People thought that he had very low self-esteem, but he was like so incredibly talented, and the reason that is he told us, he was like, in our culture, it's actually very disrespectful for a child to look an adult in the eye. And we're like, wait, what? Because over in America, obviously, it's considered disrespectful if you don't look somebody in the eye when they're talking to you. So what is maybe a custom or something about your culture that we may find strange, but that would be very interesting for us to know and understand and appreciate when we're interacting with your culture?
Yeah, I can take this one. You see, this is one of the advantages of knowing of knowing multiple languages. Is there's a lot that gets lost in translation when you're using just English. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that facets of African culture is respect for your elders. Okay, is that's regardless of whether it's a stranger or it's your subordinate, you have to respect your elders. So African language adds a prefix to everybody that's older than you, his name, right? So for instance, if you have Bob Grandpa and Bob your friend, the way I would refer to Bob Grandpa is not the same way like I would call Bob my friend. So we have this prefix that's always there. And so one of the challenges that we've had, because my wife and I are Africans, is we have these kids we're raising, and we have, my neighbor is Rob, he's retired. I can't have them calling him Rob. It's like, so you just say maybe Uncle Rob, but you see, it's respect is not in just the way you conduct yourself, it's in the way you call people, how you address people, and that's a big deal. I'll give you an example of one of my experiences because of just of respect for elders. So I get out of high school, I land myself a job in the local bank there. I'm one of the supervisors there. And lo and behold, they give me 5 people who are all older than I. And I cannot tell people that are grown up, tell them what to do. So this is corporate world, and because of the culture that I've been grown up to believe that you cannot be giving instructions to your elders. So I found myself at loggerheads. Fortunately, that's already been, when you're at work, work is work. And if you respect people and they value that, you respect them, they'll understand that, work is different. But see, that's one of the, it was a point in my life where these two conflicted, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? I've been told all my life you don't give instructions to your elders, yes sir, no sir, and you don't call them by their first name, you have the prefix to make sure that you show that reverence to people that are older than you. But that's a big deal. It's you have to respect and show a deference to your elders, and that's a huge deal that a lot of people make sure that is instilled. So yeah, it's one of those things that you always look back and say, this is different. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And I know that if we were to travel over there, I honestly feel like I need to do all this research ahead of time so that when I get there, I'm respectful. Right. Yes, I get it right. And they're not like, oh, I don't like that girl. Who is she? What about you, Pat?
We're definitely a kissing culture, and not in that sense, but But you need to know your patriarchs and your matriarchs in the family. So like greeting in the family, you need to know the hierarchy of greeting individuals in your family. So case in point, there was a situation where someone came into my mother's house, and he said, hello, Mrs. Such and such. And she looked at him, and she was like, hello, didn't speak to him for a year. And it's because he didn't come up and greet her formally, like come to her, not just come in the house and say something. There's like a formal way. Like even when I tell my friends when I'm coming in my house, I'm like, listen, make sure you walk up to my mother and you say hello and you kiss her on the cheek. Like, don't just, come up and just, walk in the house and say hello, because for them, it's about the formality of it. Like you have to make sure that you're showing that greeting to them. And they were like, but I said Mrs. Such and such. I was like, that's not enough. So, there's that, there's that sense of formality. Like even countries. Yeah. And it's funny because like, even to this day, when I come to my mother's house, like I have to, before I do anything, I can't go to the restroom. I can't do anything. I have to go find her. Hey, mommy, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And, you have to greet her, so on and so forth. And then, she'll look at me and see what's wrong with me, to tell me what's wrong with me. And then I can go to the restroom. So that's just kind of like
Will she give you one of your weird remedies before you go to the bathroom though?
No. She'll wait for a little bit.
Gotcha,
She'll wait for me to tell me. She'll wait for me to say something is wrong, and then she'll give me some random remedies. So,
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So she'll still do her assessment, but she'll just give you a random remedy after.
Exactly. So
hey Patrick, and you just leave, or you have to do the same when you're leaving? You have to do the same.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. You have to do it when you're leaving too. You can't just walk out the house. Like, no, this is my house. So it's exactly what you said. Yep. So when you're coming in, you're going. You always have to greet them the same way, and you have to greet everyone in the house. You can't just greet her and then you leave.
No.
Everybody.
You have to do it in order. Wow. Oh my gosh, Pat, this takes me back to the whole when you would go over to somebody's house and there would be one person there, then you show up and like 40 people would be there. What if you show up to the house and there's 40 people there? You still have to do it in order?
Right. And if they're older than you, you have to. If they are older than you, you have to go to them. They don't come to you. Yep.
What if you don't know?
You know.
But everybody know?
You know.
Okay.
You know. If you don't, your mother will make you quite aware.
What happens if you miss somebody or if you do it out of order? If you
is that
like
possible?
if you miss someone or if you
I'm
greet
trying
them
to think
out
if
of
I've
order.
ever done it.
Is that
I think they wouldn't let you. They would direct you into the area. No, you need to go greet your such and such first. Don't come over here.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So you at least get help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't think I could do it if I didn't have help.
I'm thinking if you intentionally that couldn't happen. No.
Yeah, I was like intentionally. I was so confused. I was like, what does that mean? So
I'm just saying, like, what if you just, because you were talking like Ivan, for example, was saying like funerals. I found this fascinating to learn that even if you didn't directly know the person, even though you were still related by maybe 4 cousins twice removed, you still had to go to the funeral. So like everybody knows the family, right? So what if there was somebody in the family that you didn't know, like their age or whatever? And so it's like, you're not intentionally doing it out of order. It was a mistake. But does anything happen to you? Like
the matriarch is probably the biggest thing for me and my family. The
Yeah.
matriarch was the biggest thing for us. So as long as the older people got it first, everybody else, if they're like 1 or 2 years in between, it's not that big of in my family, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay.
But when you get to the higher ups, you know who's older and who's not. So
The well-seasoned family.
the well-seasoned.
And you better not mess that up. See, I think if I ever, I would like make a list and I would walk in,
Right.
check off the list. Got
a little
her. Got him.
You gotta go in sibling order.
Right.
Organizational chart just in front of you. All right.
Exactly.
She's got that one. No.
Exactly. I'd make an org chart for sure.
Exactly.
So when you all visit, and I know, Pat, you were talking about visiting, and Ivan, I know you go back like whenever you can. What is probably the the thing you miss most about your country or being with your family? Is there anything that there's just one thing over another that you're just like, every time you go back, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do this, or I got to have this, or?
For me, it's like Patrick said. You see, when I came here, that's the first time I found Thanksgiving. We have Thanksgiving every week there. Okay.
Okay.
So it's the same, and so I'm so excited to hear that just his experience. This is what we do is it's not organized. It's somehow just organically just happens, and lots of food, lots of music. I mean, you got people doing that, but people still loving each other, and that's what a weekend is like. It's you don't even know what, but it happens organically, and then it stay, and it's every week. Just while we're sitting here, I'm receiving phone calls. I know there's something going on back there. They've gathered in some place there, and so those impromptu get-togethers, just sharing, and that's where you actually learn all these things we're talking about. That's what that whole experience is about. You got the matriarchs that are always making sure they have their own spiel. They always say something at those events. You kids of nowadays, back in the days,
I love those.
They always, yeah. And so sometimes you have like 4 generations, and so you get the young ones, they gather in one little corner. You got the hip ones that are the ones that think that know it all, but it always comes together, and that's the thing I miss a lot. And it's unfortunate that we have here. It's just the nucleus, and people just see each other once in a while. There is, man. People just show up at your house. Nobody needs to. They just show up and you get some food, make some food. Somehow they make it happen. And so I miss that a lot.
Gotcha. So you better make sure you always have something in your refrigerator, huh? Because you never know who's going to come over.
Yes.
Yep. Caribbean people always have food frozen in somebody's freezer. We always have food. We always have food. There's always food. There is always food.
That is true. One of my friends, she was Jamaican Indian. Every single time, Pat, every single time I went over to her house, they always had curried goat something in the freezer. Just pull it out. Yes.
Warming up.
It's crazy. Yeah. Yep, it's crazy. And it's like, I grew up like my mother used to, when we got older, she was like, I'm not cooking for you anymore. But, we had a meal every day, like all the way through. Maybe she would take Saturday off, but Sunday she would, all the way through, we were having a meal, and she was in the kitchen, or my sister was in the kitchen, so on and so forth. But yeah, it was a thing. And like, just like, you were saying, like, I that's what I miss. I miss like just, starting with 2 and ending up with, 40 people. And, and I remember we would be in the room and we would be making fun of the old people, and they'd be like, what do you mean you get up at 9? I used to get up at 7. I used to walk 3 miles to get the food, come home, cook it, and be done by 11 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. And so that camaraderie in between of like, of what they used to do and what we used to do and what we still do. And it's funny how some of the stuff that I said I would never do, I end up now doing now. So it's very ironic.
You are going to be that Haitian on the porch when your family's come over.
Oh my God. I've been trying to avoid it, but then you just find yourself doing these things.
Yep, it is true.
It's
That's
the
so
worst
funny.
and the best all at the same time.
Yeah, no, I know it is. I want to kind of go back real quick to what Ivan was saying. He was saying that the concept of Thanksgiving was a little odd because, obviously in America, we have like maybe 5, like a handful of 5, holidays. You have Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, I don't know, whatever. And so Thanksgiving, obviously in other countries and cultures, it literally is just like a weekend thing. What other holidays or celebrations do you have in your home countries or cultures that aren't celebrated here? Just things that you're just like, oh man, I wish I had that, or things that you really love and you got to go back to see if you can. And
so like I say, like for instance, there's the 72 different dialects, and so I think I explained this once to you. This is the one thing I actually found when I came here. When somebody asks you where you're from, for us in Zambia, it means a different thing. It's not where were you born, where you raised up. Everybody who's Zambian is from one specific location in Zambia. That's where we call it a tribe, from one specific tribe. And what's unique about each tribe is we all have our customs and traditions. And one of the things that each tribe does in terms of customs and traditions is they have these ceremonies, these whether it's like Thanksgiving, right? So we have these, we celebrating our harvest time. We used to back in the day. So each tribe has its own traditional ceremonies that they have, and so you get these dance. Oh, dance now dance. You guys talk about dance. Check out some videos on African dance. There's
All right,
African,
so you're gonna have to show me some of those moves, Ivan.
let's just say my and it's all in the waist. The waist. That's what African dance is. That's where it is.
Tatiana said we should have a competition. Pat and Ivan, you should get up and dance. Show us some of your.
Oh man! So
I actually pulled my Achilles. I'm sorry.
There you go.
So
Yeah. My back. My back. Yeah.
What was it? My neck, my back, my neck,
yeah.
and my back.
Plenty of remedies to choose from.
Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
But Africans
Pat,
and dance.
You heard Tatiana?
Dance,
She said you have plenty of remedies.
I heard.
Yeah, and rhythm is one of those things. So all these traditional ceremonies, there's a lot of dancing that goes on, a lot of celebration. So I mean, those are some things that you want, if you ever wanted to visit, just attend some of these traditional ceremonies that they have. That's one of the few things. I mean, African society has evolved over the years, and they've adopted a lot of Western stuff, and so that's the only few ways that they've actually maintained some of those original things that they used to do. So they have these ceremonies that highlight some of these things they used to do in the past. And so those are always great adventure to go visit and learn, especially if you're visiting. That's a great way of learning about culture. And so, yeah, I always tell people, if you can attend a traditional ceremony, that's one unique way where you can actually, in a condensed way, learn about how they used to do things in the past.
Yeah, and I would agree with you about the dance. I think, throughout growing up, like all the course of study I took in dance over the years, African and West African and Afro-Caribbean were always my favorite dance forms that we studied, because of the rhythmic, it was just so like emotion, like you could just feel it, and it was grounded, and you had these big energetic movements, and it was about something. So I think that was always one of my favorite art forms to learn growing up. What about you, Pat? Are there any like holidays that you all celebrate that we don't have in America?
Carnival. Like there is Mardi Gras, and then there's Canadian Carnival, but there's nothing like a carnival from like the West Indies. And it's like, it's not just, a city or a state or a province, like it's the whole country. Like everybody's having it. You're out in the streets and it's every form of dance you can think of. Everybody's just having the time of their life. I think carnival, if it was a thing like, just to have that happen here, like, then they have like subsets of that. They have, Miami has a version of the carnival, and New York has a great carnival, things of that nature. But I think that like, that's kind of one thing I've never gotten to truly experience. But I've, my sisters and my cousins and my older brothers and sisters, like they have experienced that, and it's like amazing. So I'm just like, that's like bucket list right there. So, but I think that just seeing it and seeing like small versions of it, like in Miami, they have Haitian Flag Day. So it's pretty known everywhere in the United States, but in Miami, it's like a big thing, and they'll go out to Bayside and they'll have their own carnival, and just being out there and seeing the masses of people just jumping up and down and leaning to the left and leaning to the right and waving their flags, and, hundreds of huts and stands, and just everybody just having their time of their life. Like that type of experience, there's an energy behind that you just can't replicate unless you are truly like understanding of that culture. So I'd say carnival is something that, I miss. And just being up here, I haven't experienced as much of a carnival-like atmosphere yet. But you wait and see when I find one.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with what you were saying. I actually was fortunate to go over to the West Indies during one of their carnivals, and it, like you said, it was so vibrant, so beautiful, and it's like you just stand there in awe about the music and the dances and the costumes, and there's just so much like to take in. So yeah, you are spot on with that for sure.
Yep.
All right, y'all. So we have talked so much about your countries and your cultures. If people wanted to go to Zambia or they wanted to go to Haiti, what are some things that you really want them to go see, go do, some must-see things and places to visit when they go?
So if you're going to go to Zambia, you want to make sure you see the Victoria Falls. I mean, they have heard of the Victoria Falls. The Victoria Falls is actually situated in Zambia. It is so easy to get there. It's one of the longest waterfalls that in the world, and so that's always a great place to live. If you like game, if you like seeing animals in their natural habitat, the whole country is littered with game packs, and so that's always a great visit. The people that like a nightlife, let's just say they know how to throw a party in nightlife. And unlike in the US where it shuts down at 2 o'clock, it's an all-nighter, and in the morning until you drop. I guess that's.
Are you serious? Wow.
Yep.
Right. We need to be like those old people Pat was talking about that go to sleep at like 7 just so they can get up and go to the club.
So yeah, there's the nightlife. I mean, people who love nightlife really have a great time there because there's no limits. There's no public intoxication. There's no drinking outside. People can just do whatever you want to do there. Just don't drink and drive. A lot of water rafting stuff there. There's a lot of it. Yeah. So lots of fun. If you want to learn about culture, we'll do a little tourism, and no mountains to climb. It's flat there. So
we'll go with Pat for that if we want to do some mountain climbing.
Yeah.
The sun rises over the plains. That must be gorgeous.
Oh yeah, that's fun. The sunsets and sunrises are it's some of the most fun out there. Yeah, and I miss the birds. That's one thing when I noticed when I got here is I don't hear the birds. There's a constant chirping of birds in Zambia.
Just like lots of different kinds of birds, or
yeah,
like
all kinds of birds.
Okay.
All kinds of birds. Yeah, including chickens.
You would have to collect those if you want to get married, huh? So if you hear the chickens, collect the chickens. So
Yep.
Yeah, I've always heard how gorgeous, like I've seen pictures of Victoria Falls. But you know what's interesting is I kind of feel stupid now because I never knew that you could see it in Zambia. Is it bordered with any other country, or is it in Zambia?
So it's in Zambia. So the river that from where you find the falls is actually it's called the Zambezi. That's where the name Zambia came from.
Okay.
It's from the river itself where there's falls. So on one end is Zimbabwe, on the other side is Zambia. But it's on the it's actually you can actually see it from both sides.
Wow.
Okay, so that country without even knowing it has been on my bucket list because I've always wanted to see Victoria Falls.
You can actually bungee jump off the falls if you want to.
Not doing that.
Into the other country?
Into the gorge. Yeah, bungee jump. You can. There's a zip line.
Oh, zip line!
Wow.
You can get one of those little prop planes, the little ones that just
can
like
you,
a glider thing. The glider thing.
Do that.
Yeah. I need something that's going to keep me safe away from the water, because I can't swim, but I still want to enjoy Victoria Falls or anybody in water.
And like the Niagara Falls, once in a while you get somebody fall off on the.
They're not doing it right. If they would have had the zip line and the bungee jump, we wouldn't have people falling off.
Some people just this selfie thing that people like, you got a waterfall down here and
let's do it again.
That won't happen at Victoria Falls.
No. So yeah, do those things.
But if it does, the Zambian people are really nice and they'll come to your rescue.
They'll rescue you. They might actually give you a monument if you don't survive.
And then I'm gonna come to Pat for a random remedy.
They're like, herein lies.
I don't know if there's a remedy that can heal death, but
Sure there is. Pat, you just put some
I'll
mango
get back to
leaves
you.
with.
I'll have to consult my mother. She might go to the nurse
There's
side
no
and be
voodoo
like,
magic,
well,
right?
she's like, no. She might be like, well, she doesn't have a pulse, so she's actually not here. So I don't know if I can help her. So yeah.
Wow. All right, Pat.
That's crazy.
So now that we know we are jumping to our death in Zambia, what should we go do in Haiti? We apparently should visit Haiti first.
You should start there, maybe. Yeah. You obviously, if you're going to a carnival, that kind of just seals your fate right there. You know, if you're down during the months of carnival, I'm not sure right off the top of my head when carnival is right now, but carnival is always great. Going to see the countryside or the artsy side of Jacmel. That's a great country to go, a great part of Haiti to go see. A lot of people go there to see Notre Dame or the Citadel. So the Citadel is more like an old armory. So a lot of people go out there to see that. The beaches are amazing. If you are, there's some beaches are better than others. So the beaches are really great in Haiti. And then just experiencing the food and like the any type of art and dance culture, not even art like dance culture, but arts in general. Just experiencing any portion of that is always going to be great in Haiti. You know, they have a lot of resorts that will bring the arts to you now, so you don't even have to go as far to do that. So there are a lot of like resorts in Haiti that will do that for you. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And you didn't tell me. We're taking a trip.
Haiti is so diverse. You can go north, south, east, west, and have a completely different experience, culinary wise, arts wise, just geographically. You're having four very different experiences. Architecture, the influences. We've had so many migration groups over the centuries. You can go to pockets of Haiti and have, Haitian Jewish culture, Haitian Polish culture, stronger Arabic influences in the north. It's so diverse, and wherever you go, you're sure to have an experience, as Patrick already mentioned.
So basically,
and then that's the reason why. That's the reason why you find that a lot of people, and that's another common misconception, because like when I tell people that I'm Haitian, they're like, well, you don't look Haitian. I'm like, can we not go down this road again? Because we have so many, like I found out because of my name, my last name is actually the first name of the slaves or whatever, Casimir Pulaski, who was actually Polish. So I have like Polish way back down into the depths of my background. And my mother's like, well, that's where you get your nose from. And I looked him up and I was like, oh, I guess I have his nose, whatever, So like, there's so many different cultures that are embedded in Haiti that you'll have so many different features. So Haitians all around, like, I run into, Haitians that are very fair skinned, Haitians that are very dark skinned, Haitians that are Spanish, so on and so forth. So because we've had so many melting pots in the country, that we do have a lot of variety in our looks and as she said, our culture and what we offer in terms of for culture wise and aesthetic.
So it seems then that if you want to take a trip, you almost need to, because I know sometimes when people take vacations, they might spend like a few days or a week in one particular area. But it sounds like if you go, you might want to visit different areas or regions within the country to really kind of get like a full experience, right?
Yeah, my mother, when she usually goes, she spends about 2 weeks and stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You want to take a nice long trip. I think a 3 or 4 day trip to stay in one city, you can still have a great experience. Right. But if you want to diversify that, spend a few more days in Haiti and enjoy its result culture.
Yeah. I always tell people, you should be curious and, you should go out there, and there's a lot out there that you never know until you go there and just experience it. And sometimes it's just a small trip as going to the market itself. Just the local. If you just go to the local markets there, you'll be surprised how much you can learn. I mean, I'll give you an example, and I don't think I talked about this. What in terms of cuisine? So there's different tribes have these little things that they eat that not everybody else eats, right? And so I'll give you an example: caterpillars. There's the people that like nice and crisp, just fried caterpillars. Fried caterpillars. I don't eat them, but they I don't know about in Haiti if there are some of these small creatures that some places eat, but yeah, you learn about insects and fishes and birds and rodents that these cultures eat, and just by hearing it, you're like, who does that? But when you go there and hear it and see it and experience it, it's like chicken.
Now
because everything tastes like chicken. Well, that's such a great point. I think the way that we look at food and harvest food in other countries outside the United States is so unique. You say, I'm eating a grub, say in Haiti, and someone here might think a grub, like what's in my front lawn? And not exactly. We're not picking up worms from our front lawns. These bugs, these whatever, our food sources are cultivated to be food sources. Yeah. So they're healthy, they're healthy relatively, right? They're healthy, they're nutritious, they're tasty when done right. We have so much more food sources that we have access to than we utilize. So
that is true.
It's interesting to see what we can create with some butterfly wings. Or whatever else, similar to chitlins or what's done here.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and yes, I get it and I understand, and everything you are saying is exactly correct. And I've seen the wilderness shows where they go into the tree and they pull out a grub, and I'm sure if I absolutely had to do it, like if I jumped off Victoria Falls and people thought I was dead and I had to scrounge for food, I get it. But I just have a thing for bugs. I don't know. I think I might starve.
If you add some smoked paprika, you'll never know the difference.
So we have a saying in Zambia, and this is very true, and this is the foundation of everything. They say a child that does not travel thinks his mother's cooking is the best.
Right.
So the principle is there. You think whatever is the little bubble that you're in. Trust there's million of things and you'd be like your test buds, your experience of what is good and what's fun, that can actually change if you open up and experience all these other realms and worlds that are out there. And so I always encourage people, you travel, definitely learn, experience, and you'll be better for it.
That is true. I still think that you would have to lie to me first about the grubs and tell me it's something else. And then once I'm like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. What was that?
You didn't watch Pumbaa? You didn't watch Lion King 1? You didn't see that?
Right, exactly.
Slimy yet satisfying.
Right. Yeah. Just saying, with the right amount of seasonings, anything can, well, not anything, but
it can come close. As long as there's a hint of chicken.
Right. Well, Pat, is there anything, oh my gosh, any strange food you want to tell us about? What is the strangest food you ate growing up?
My mother tried to cook me a cow tongue one time, and I
love it.
Why is that the first thing that came to my mind?
You like them, Ivan?
Oh yeah, I actually have had it here.
I just couldn't taste something that was tasting me back, so I just felt like I was going to just respectfully decline, because I came home and the cow tongue is huge, just like and it's just sitting outside the pot, and I'm like, what is that? She's like, oh, we're having cow tongue. I was like, yes, I'm having peanut butter and jelly sandwich tonight. So that was
you're missing Patrick.
To this day, my mother. And then it's just simple things like my mother, like if you eat like my mother, now I do the same thing, like the gristle inside the bone, like cracking the bone open and eating the inside of chicken bones. Like you just don't eat a chicken bone and leave it. No, you have to eat the gristle, the cartilage, everything inside the bone. Like if you're eating a red snapper, so like red snapper is a really big thing for Haitians, right? My mother eats the head, like the whole thing, like just takes it and just like
Best
devoured
part.
it.
I
And
can't-
she's
Around
like,
here, there's some meat, especially in this section here. There's the
Yeah, that cheek head, the eyes.
yeah.
oh my God.
No,
My
And then you
mother,
use the bone for fish.
Just
for
the bone nicely.
for
put it
soup,
aside.
yep. My
Yes.
mother, she's like, you're not gonna eat the head? I'm like, no.
You do not throw away the head. You
The
do not throw away the head.
I never throw away the
seafood
head,
markets
no.
and I get snapper cheeks, like snapper cheeks and throat. This is the best. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For real?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
All
give you
right.
some recommendations
All right.
for in town.
Okay. All right. We're gonna do this. We're gonna have snapper cheek. Tati and I are going for snapper cheek after this.
It's
But
like
not
a
I
wish you the
spicy
best.
curried snapper throat. It's like snapper throat and cheeks.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Right.
Go ahead.
Like I said, you just gotta tell. You don't tell me. Don't tell me what I'm eating, but it better taste good. It has to
Let her-
look good. If it doesn't look good, I can't even.
It's like the equivalent of chicken breast. It's the most
Okay.
tender,
Really?
the most tender part of the fish, the most flavorful part. Naturally, you don't have to do too much. There's a sweetness to it. Y'all made me
Yeah.
hungry.
I'm learning something new. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, y'all. I don't even know if you can answer this last question as we start to wrap up, because you've talked about so many amazing things about your cultures and your countries, so many things I didn't know, but obviously so many things that you're so super fond of. Snapper cheek.
Yes,
Okay. All right. If you all had to pick just one thing that you love the most about your culture and your country, what would it be? Just one. We're taking a minute. Who wants to go first? Tati? Pat? Ivan?
I'm gonna say the food.
The food? Okay.
I'm gonna say the food because the food is like the staple and it just brings everything else together. So I would say the food. Like I crave, like if I don't get it after a while, like I crave it. Like when I go home, my mother knows, my aunties know. Like my auntie will make me a pineapple upside down cake. Like they know like what I need in my life when I get home. She's like, I have a cake ready for you. I was like, a whole cake. Don't give me no slice. I need a whole cake, right? You know, don't play with me with no slice, you know. So for me, like it's like that's the first thing I do. I find a Haitian restaurant and I'm going and I'm getting griot, I'm getting lambi, I'm getting
lambi.
poisson
Oh
bruxelles,
my
I'm
God.
getting
What is that?
I'm getting
Wait,
all.
hold
So
on.
lambi is like
Wait a minute.
so
I
lambi
know,
is
either
like
one of you better tell me what it is.
stewed conch meat,
That sounds awesome.
and
I want some.
they usually cook it in a pressure cooker and then they stew it. Oh yeah, it's really good, really
Okay.
really good.
So either you need to make me some after the podcast, or you need to come down from DC.
That's a whole process.
Since we're live, I can make the lambi. They sell conch locally.
Lambi
It is a
after
process
this.
because
It is
as
a
with all
process,
Haitian
yeah.
food, it takes forever.
We
Forever and a day.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so for me, it's the food. Yeah, definitely the food.
Okay. Awesome. What about you, Ivan? Not grubs.
It's just that sense of community and the
Or
parties
caterpillars, that's what it
themselves.
was.
The caterpillar. No, it's just this sense of community. Just those days when you didn't even know how the day was going to end, and somehow it always ends up on a high note. Especially the weekends. I mean, we were never short of something happening. You didn't have to plan for it. You know it was going to happen organically, and so I miss that a lot. Just being able to looking forward to a weekend. You don't even know what's going to happen, but you're just looking forward to a weekend. You don't even know where it's going to happen, and you look in your fridge. Maybe you think you can only feed 4 people. By the end of the night, you've fed 100 people, and there's still food in your fridge, and you're like, how did that just happen?
They added food into your fridge.
They added food, and that's the thing, and that is the principle. Actually, you see, just have enough for 5. By the time you're done, you're gonna have leftovers for you to eat the whole week.
Oh yes,
And that's
we
the
love
principle.
leftovers.
Yep.
This is why I do not like leftovers to this day, for context.
Gotcha.
Listen,
Oh
we would
my
have food
gosh.
we'd have a party. You'd have a party on Saturday, and my mother would still be using that same food on Wednesday of the next week. And by that Friday, that food is in a stew. Yep.
Yes.
Hence,
Took me
where
back with that.
that's where talking about soup jumu on New Year's Eve day. Come on, yeah.
Oh my gosh, y'all, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I have learned so much in about an hour, maybe, that yes, this has been enlightening, entertaining. If you all had to leave our guests with a parting thought, a word of wisdom, or a great takeaway about your culture or your country, what would it be? Ivan, we'll start with you. What is something you want to leave our guests with?
Just go out there. There's a lot out there. I mean, embrace all different cultures. I'm a strong believer that every culture, every country, there's something out there that you can learn, and you can only be better for it. And so, be willing to share your own culture. Embrace your culture. I've never met anybody whose culture is boring. And so, just embrace your culture, and you'll be surprised that some people will find the fact that you're talking about caterpillars fascinating, and you think that's not, but you see that's the beauty about different cultures. And so, share your cultures and experience of other cultures. You'll be better for it.
All right, Pat, what about you? Any
Yeah,
final thoughts or takeaways?
Yeah, I just think that, never settle for what you hear on the news, never settle for what you hear in the media about anybody's culture. It's about finding out for yourself. There are people, even when we go over and I go overseas and I say I come from America, there's common misconceptions about us, but I'm like, but there's so much more. And the same thing goes for Haiti. For me, there's so much more to Haiti than meets the eye. What you see in some of those graphic commercials or so on and so forth is not all of what Haiti is. That's only a portion. And, just like anything, you need to find, even simple things like talking to people that are from there, you'll find, those things that fascinate you, whether it be now you just heard about Lumbee, or, or if it's something as simple as, we're just going to keep using caterpillars, so, but it's just about,
move away from the caterpillar. The
No,
caterpillar's
we're
not going to
staying there.
happen.
We're helping you assimilate, so we just got to keep talking about it. Okay. There's just so much more to a country than meets the eye, and the only way you learn about it is taking the time to dive a little bit deeper than most people will. So you'll find beauty in anything. Diamond comes from a rock of coal, so you always got to dig deeper and finding the beauty in everything.
Very true. What about you, Miss Co-host? Final thoughts?
I'm just happy, one, to be able to be here. So thank you for inviting me. This is always a nerve-wracking experience for me being on camera. So I was happy to support. But I want to thank you both, because this is the first time I had a chance to meet you and hear both of your stories. And I think this was just such a great conversation for sharing and celebrating. But one thing that I found sort of as a theme of importance is just the strength of the African diaspora. We come from two, three different countries. We're all of sort of different ages, but we have similar diasporic experiences through our food, through our cuisine, through our music, the way we celebrate, the way we love food, community, our cultures. So that was fun to see those similarities. We are a lot more similar than we are different, but there is such uniqueness in those differences that need to be celebrated. So thank you both for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you again for joining us, y'all. I have really enjoyed this conversation. And to our guests in our audience, for more information on our guest today, you can head over to armaniray.com. And thank you again to all of our audience for watching and listening Start Now, a podcast to empower, inspire, entertain, educate, and inform. You have to start somewhere, and you have to start sometime. So why not start now? We look forward to you all joining us next time. Be safe and well.